This is a CBS News Special Report. Part of our continuing coverage of the impeachment trial of President Clinton. From Washington, here is Dan Rather.
Good morning. On this solemn and momentous day in the nation's capital and for our nation as a whole, for only the second time in United States history, the Senate is about to begin an impeachment trial proceeding that could eventually result in removing the president from office. Indeed, that is the goal of the Republicans who will present the case. In the run-up to this rarest of trials, and even now, there's considerable confusion over how to proceed beyond the barest of formalities. Here's what to expect in the next few hours at least. The Senate summons Republican House Judiciary Chairman Henry Hyde and 12 House Republicans who will act as prosecutors in the Senate trial. It is their goal to remove President Clinton from office. Hyde, from the floor of the Senate, will read the 2 articles of impeachment that he helped to sculpt, the articles that accuse the president of 1 count of perjury, lying under oath, and 1 of obstructing justice. The Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, Republican William Rehnquist, will be summoned. He is to preside at the president's trial. He will swear in the Senate as a whole and as individuals as a jury. But as you know, serious disagreements over how to conduct this trial, everything from timetable to witnesses, even whether to have a full trial or come to some sort of compromise short of removal from office, all this is being fought over in a highly partisan atmosphere. For the latest, we go to CBS News Chief Washington Correspondent Bob Schieffer. Bob, good morning.
Well, good morning, Dan, and you're absolutely right. Once we get through the ceremonial part of this procedure this morning, and there will be considerable ceremony, the managers, the prosecutors who will present this case to the Senate will make the long walk all the way across the Capitol and formally read the articles of impeachment on the Senate floor in just a matter of minutes now. But once we get past that, no one is quite sure where it goes from there. Republicans seem to be coming together behind a plan that will allow both the White House and the prosecutors to take 2 or 3 days to present evidence, and then if either side wants to call witnesses to testify, the full Senate will vote on each individual witness. It would take 51 senators in order for the Senate to issue a subpoena for those witnesses to testify. Trent Lott, the Republican leader, conceded last night that his plan to wrap this all up in 1 week, next week, he couldn't get the support for that. He's now talking about a trial lasting a matter of weeks. Some Democrats say if you start calling witnesses, it's going to last a matter of months. At this point, it appears to be an open-ended process, Dan.
And on your screen now, you see and hear what little there is to hear as the House impeachment managers, these are members of the House, walking from the House side of the Capitol over to the Senate side. This is part of the ritual, small as it may be, the formality. These are the prosecutors. This is the core of the Republican effort to remove the president from office, led by Henry Hyde, the Republican from Illinois, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Representative Bob Barr, the Republican from Georgia, is there. Representative Ed Bryant, Republican of Tennessee. Representative Steve Boyer, Republican of Indiana. Christopher Cannon, Republican of Utah. Perhaps you saw him pass by. These are the members of the House Judiciary Committee. Representative Charles Kennedy, Republican of Florida, who began his political career as a Democrat but switched to the Republican Party at the height of the Reagan-Bush era. Representative Steve Chabot, Republican of Ohio, passing by. Representative Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, who's been so prominent in these proceedings, walking with this group. Representative Asa Hutchinson is there. Republican from President Clinton's home state, Arkansas. Past the statues, past heroes of the United States Congress. And as the House prosecutorial managers make this trek from their side of the Capitol over to the Senate, as part of these opening formalities, we call in former United States Senator Warren Rudman, formerly a Republican of New Hampshire, now a CBS News consultant for these purposes in our Washington studio. Senator Rudman, anybody who knows the Senate knows that the Senate is strong on senatorial prerogatives. You've been there for an impeachment, the impeachment of a United States federal judge. What's it like when these articles of impeachment are presented?
It's very sobering and somber. I was actually there for the impeachment of 3 federal judges, Dan, and that was hardly the President of the United States, and I will tell you that the place is sober, serious, and people will take their constitutional oath with the thought in mind they will make every effort to be fair. Having said that, obviously there will be partisanship before this is over. But this is a very grim and to some extent sad place this morning. It's a place where no one wants to be.
Stick with us, Senator. Let's see and hear what's happening as the core group of Republican prosecutors in the form of members of the Judiciary Committee have come to the Senate side of the Capitol. Senator Rudman, you know many members of the Senate quite well. I'm asking you for an assessment based on your conversations with senators. Has the Senate Majority Leader, Republican Trent Lott, lost control of the process?
Well, in order to lose control, you have to have control, and I don't think he's ever had control, nor has the Senate had control from the time that this impeachment was voted by the House. The problem that Trent Lott has is that in a Republican caucus of 55 members, he cannot simply get 28 people to agree with him and say that's what we're going to do. I mean, theoretically he could do that, but he just cannot politically do that. He has to have an overwhelming number of people in his caucus agree with him before any plan to proceed can be adopted. The Republican Party does not speak with one voice or think with one mind. We have people who are liberal, people who are extraordinarily conservative, people who are very bitter about this and think the president ought to be publicly humiliated, others who think it should be done with very quickly. And so the bottom line is, Dan, that Trent Lott has a tough time dealing with this.
Well, the gavel sounds on the Senate side. Senator Strom Thurmond speaks, and let's pick it up.
The managers on the part of the House of Representatives. Senator, be in order. Either take your seats or go to the cloakroom.
Senator Strom Thurmond, Republican of South Carolina, is the president pro tem of the Senate and in charge of this early formal presenting of the impeachment charges by the House to the Senate. Senator Thurmond is 95 years old, the oldest member to ever serve in the United States Congress.
Mr. President and members of the Senate, I announce the presence of the managers on the part of the House of Representatives to conduct proceedings on behalf of the House concerning the impeachment of William Jefferson Clinton, President of the United States.
The managers on the part of the House will be received and escorted to the well of the Senate. The Sergeant-at-Arms will make the proclamation.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons are commanded to keep silent on pain of imprisonment while the House of Representatives is exhibiting to the Senate of the United States articles of impeachment against William Jefferson Clinton, President of the United States.
The managers on the floor of the House will proceed.
Mr. President, the managers on the part of the House of Representatives are here and present and ready to present the articles of impeachment which have been preferred by the House of Representatives against William Jefferson Clinton, President of the United States. The House adopted the following resolution, which, with the permission of the Senate, I will read. House Resolution 10, resolved that in continuance of the authority conferred in House Resolution 614 of the 105th Congress, adopted by the House of Representatives and delivered to the Senate on December 19, 1998, Mr. Hyde of Illinois, Mr. Sensenbrenner of Wisconsin, Mr. McCollum of Florida, Mr. Geekus of Pennsylvania, Mr. Kennedy of Florida, Mr. Booyer of Indiana, Mr. Bryant of Tennessee, Mr. Shabbat of Ohio, Mr. Barr of Georgia, Mr. Hutchinson of Arkansas, Mr. Cannon of Utah, Mr. Rogan of California, and Mr. Graham of South Carolina are appointed managers to conduct the impeachment trial against William Jefferson Clinton, President of the United States. That a message be sent to the Senate to inform the Senate of these appointments, and that the managers so appointed may, in connection with the preparation and the conduct of the trial, exhibit the articles of impeachment to the Senate and take all other actions necessary, which may include the following. 1, employing legal, clerical, and other necessary assistance and incurring such other expenses as may be necessary to be paid from amounts available to the Committee on the Judiciary under applicable expense resolutions or from the applicable accounts of the House of Representatives. 2, sending for persons and papers and filing with the Secretary of the Senate on the part of the House of Representatives any pleadings in conjunction with or subsequent to the exhibition of the articles of impeachment that the managers consider necessary. With the permission of the Senate, I will now read the articles of impeachment. House Resolution 611, resolved that William Jefferson Clinton, President of the United States, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and that the following articles of impeachment be exhibited to the United States Senate. Articles of impeachment exhibited by the House of Representatives of the United States of America in the name of itself and of the people of the United States of America against William Jefferson Clinton, President of the United States of America, in maintenance and support of its impeachment against him for high crimes and misdemeanors. Article 1. In his conduct while President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton, in violation of his constitutional oath faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States and to the best of his ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, has willfully corrupted and manipulated the judicial process of the United States for his personal gain and exoneration, impeding the administration of justice, in that on August 17, 1998, William Jefferson Clinton swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before a federal grand jury of the United States. Contrary to that oath, William Jefferson Clinton willfully provided perjurious, false, and misleading testimony to the grand jury concerning one or more of the following. 1, the nature and details of his relationship with a subordinate government employee. 2, prior perjurious, false, and misleading testimony he gave in a federal civil rights action brought against him. 3, prior false and misleading statements he allowed his attorney to make to a federal judge in that civil rights action. And 4, his corrupt efforts to influence the testimony of witnesses and to impede the discovery of evidence in that civil rights action. In doing this, William Jefferson Clinton has undermined the integrity of his office, has brought disrepute on the presidency, has betrayed his trust as president, and has acted in a manner subversive of the rule of law and justice to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. Wherefore, William Jefferson Clinton, by such conduct, warrants impeachment and trial and removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. Article 2. In his conduct while President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton, in violation of his constitutional oath faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States and to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, has prevented, obstructed, and impeded the administration of justice, and has to that end engaged personally and through his subordinates and agents in a course of conduct or scheme designed to delay, impede, cover up, and conceal the existence of evidence and testimony related to a federal civil rights action brought against him in a duly instituted judicial proceeding. The means used to implement this course of conduct or scheme included one or more of the following acts. 1. On or about December 17, 1997, William Jefferson Clinton corruptly encouraged a witness in a federal civil rights action brought against him to execute a sworn affidavit in that proceeding that he knew to be perjurious, false, and misleading. 2. On about December 17, 1997, William Jefferson Clinton corruptly encouraged a witness in a federal civil rights action brought against him to give perjurious, false, and misleading testimony if and when called to testify personally in that proceeding. 3. On or about December 28, 1997, William Jefferson Clinton corruptly engaged in, encouraged, or supported a scheme to conceal evidence that had been subpoenaed in a federal civil rights action brought against him. 4. Beginning on or about December 7, 1997, and continuing through and including January 14, 1998, William Jefferson Clinton intensified and succeeded in an effort to secure job assistance to a witness in a federal civil rights action brought against him in order to corruptly prevent the truthful testimony of that witness in that proceeding at a time when the truthful testimony of that witness would have been harmful to him. 5. On January 17, 1998, at his deposition in a federal civil rights action brought against him, William Jefferson Clinton corruptly allowed his attorney to make false and misleading statements to a federal judge characterizing an affidavit in order to prevent questioning deemed relevant by the judge. Such false and misleading statements were subsequently acknowledged by his attorney in a communication to that judge. On or about January 18 and January 21, 1998, William Jefferson Clinton related a false and misleading account of events relevant to a federal civil rights action brought against him to a potential witness in that proceeding in order to corruptly influence the testimony of that witness. On or about January 21, 23, and 26, 1998, William Jefferson Clinton made false and misleading statements to potential witnesses in a federal grand jury proceeding in order to corruptly influence the testimony of those witnesses. The false and misleading statements made by William Jefferson Clinton were repeated by the witnesses to the grand jury, causing the grand jury to receive false and misleading information. In all this, William Jefferson Clinton has undermined the integrity of his office, has brought disrepute on the presidency, has betrayed his trust as president, and has acted in a manner subversive of the rule of law and justice to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. Wherefore, William Jefferson Clinton, by such conduct, warrants impeachment and trial and removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. Passed the House of Representatives December 19, 1998. Newt Gingrich, Speaker of the House of Representatives, attest Robin H. Carl, Clerk. Mr. President, that completes the exhibition of the articles of impeachment against William Jefferson Clinton, President of the United States. The managers request that the Senate take order for the trial. The managers now request leave to withdraw.
Thank you, Mr. Manager Hyde. The Senate will notify the House of Representatives when it is ready to proceed.
"74-year-old Henry Hyde, Republican of Illinois, has stated the case against the president, what he and the Republican Judiciary Committee members, who are the prosecutors, believe they can prove against the president, and the statement of why they seek to remove him from office."
And unanimous consent that the presiding officer be authorized to appoint a committee of 6 senators, 3 upon the recommendation of the Majority Leader and 3 upon the recommendation of the Democratic Leader, to escort the Chief Justice into the Senate chamber.
Without objection, it is so ordered.
And now, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate stand in recess until the hour of 12:45 today. And before the chair puts this request, I would say as a reminder to all senators that at 1 p.m. today, following a live quorum, the Chief Justice and all senators will be sworn in. I thank all senators.
Without objection, so ordered. Senate stands in recess.
So after the opening formalities, the Senate takes a recess until 12:45 Eastern Time, 11:45 Central Time today. Urgent, Dateline Washington. President Clinton's lawyers just across here at the White House say that the president is now ready to accept the entire record of the House impeachment inquiry. That would be as a means of avoiding witnesses. Now, to put that in perspective for you, and so give you an overview of what's happening here, the 3 key people in the effort to remove President Clinton from office have now become Henry Hyde, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Trent Lott, the Republican House Majority Leader, and Mitch McConnell, whose name doesn't get mentioned all that often, but senator from Kentucky, who's a power behind the scenes in this effort to remove the president. So far, things are going very strongly their way. You say, well, why should it? The reason is, among other things, the Republicans have an overwhelming majority in the House of Representatives, and they have a majority in the Senate. And so, once again, Representative Hyde, Trent Lott, and Mitch McConnell are getting something they wanted, and that is President Clinton to accept the entire record of the House impeachment inquiry as a means of avoiding witnesses. We go now back to Bob Schieffer. Bob, let's try to put this moment in context, the moment in which the House formally says to the Senate, we're ready to prove to you why the president should be removed.
Well, it's a historic moment, but I must tell you in all honesty, Dan, I'm not sure that many people here sense the historic moment of what has just transpired. I sense more here a group of people who find themselves caught up in some inexorable force that is moving in a direction they're not sure where, and under control that they don't have. I think people here are confused. I think they don't know what's going to happen next. The Republicans think they've come to some agreement on how to conduct this trial. The Democrats at this point say under no circumstances are they going to accept witnesses without a fight. I think we're in for a lot of partisan back and forth even before this trial, the business part of this trial gets underway. A lot of people thought it would start on Monday. I believe now it's going to be later in the week before they can even start the business part of this trial. It's an odd moment here, but in some ways I don't sense people here feeling that they're in the midst of a historical moment.
We go also to CBS News White House correspondent Scott Pelley. Scott, this is pretty much the way things started in the House of Representatives. How deep is the concern at the White House that there will be a similar result? That is, that there will be a trial, whatever length it now looks like it's going to be 3-4 weeks, maybe longer, but in the end, that the president in the Senate, as he did in the House, will lose and will be removed from office.
Well, Dan, a trial is certainly not the outcome that the White House was hoping for. On the day that he was impeached, the president invited members of the Senate to contact the White House and try to reach some sort of compromise that would punish the president in some way, but guarantee that he could remain in office for the next 2 years. Once a trial gets started, no one can foresee the end. Now, here's what's happening behind the scenes right now. First and foremost, the White House wants to avoid having any witnesses testify at this trial. Several of the president's attorneys met with several senators last night, a bipartisan group of senators, and indicated that the White House would be willing to stipulate, that is, agree to part of the record, if it could be avoided, if the calling of witnesses could be avoided. Now, it's difficult to see how this could eliminate witnesses altogether. For example, Monica Lewinsky's testimony before the grand jury flatly contradicts the testimony of the president. So it seems clear that the president's lawyers are never going to stipulate to Monica Lewinsky's testimony, that is, agree to it in every detail. But perhaps with some stipulations, the White House will be able to avoid the testimony of some secondary witnesses. But as Bob Schieffer just said about the members of the Senate at the Capitol, the same is true here. Everyone is very concerned that they have no idea where all of this could lead. Dan?
Scott Pelley, the White House. Let's return to former Senator Warren Rudman, Republican of New Hampshire, who's so well acquainted with many of these senators who will make this decision. Senator, explain to us and explain to those who are watching at home or wherever they may be looking, why the senators are not listening to public opinion, or in fact, are they listening to public opinion? Because out there in America, there is a sense among many people that there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect between Washington and the American people as a whole. Let's talk about that for a moment.
Well, let's put it on two planes. Let's put it on a high plane and a low plane. The high plane, you would have to say that members of the Senate at times like this should not pay attention to public opinion. We're elected to come to Washington to fulfill their constitutional duties in a serious way. And there's nothing any more serious than impeaching a president. And if senators take the oath, if their constituents disagree with it, so be it. They'll pay a price. Now let's take the low road. The low road is that although you are quite correct, Dan, in that the country generally is against this, Republicans, rather overwhelmingly, are very upset with this president, and a majority of them would like to see him removed from office. That is particularly true for House members, not so true for Senate members who represent an entire state. So politically, many people feel there isn't a great deal to risk, although I would have to say that for members of the Senate, bucking public opinion, particularly if it resulted in removal, and I'm not sure this is going to result in that, but if it did, I have said before publicly, I'll say it again this morning, I think my party and my friends would pay a very, very big price. Now, some of them may be willing to do that, and if they are, then more power to them for sticking to whatever their convictions are.
Senator, when you talk to other senators, particularly older senators, those who've been around for a bit, is there not some concern of the public perception in some quarters, not all of them Democratic, that this is in fact a kind of effort at a, quote, coup? That is, you have a twice elected, popularly elected president of the United States, and so those that you mentioned in the Republican Party who dislike him and what he stands for, having been unable to beat him at the polls, have found another way to get him out of office.
Unquestionably, that is true, Dan. And of course, the tough issue here for the Republican Party is the vote in the House. I mean, impeachments are not supposed to be partisan. The founders never intended that. You read the Federalist Papers, and that is precisely the opposite of what they intended. Here you had two propositions in the House. Either A, the president committed certain offenses and they're impeachable, or B, they were about sex, about personal life, and they're not impeachable. How is it that 98% of Republicans find that Proposition A is right, and 98% of Democrats find that Proposition B is right, although they all come from the same backgrounds and education, these 400 and some odd House members. And so the public feels it is very partisan. People are out to get the president, and, you know, there's no amount of talking is going to dissuade people from believing that.
Senator Warren Rudman, let's go to our veteran Washington correspondent, Phil Jones, who's one of our most dogged reporters, wears out shoe leather, been talking to people on the phone. Phil, is there any sense in the Senate that the United States Senate is also on trial here?
Oh, Dan, I think absolutely. Technically, of course, it's William Jefferson Clinton who's on trial, but the fact is, the reality is that the United States Senate is on trial. The Senate Republicans are on trial. They know that. And the Senate as an institution takes great pride in operating with decorum and dignity. It truly believes it is the upper body. One prediction, don't worry, in the Senate, this is not going to get out of hand like it did in the House.
Well, we'll see as time goes along. Gloria Borger, our CBS News consultant who also works for U.S. News and Report, is with us this morning. Gloria, what options are open to Trent Lott at this moment, keeping in mind that he is under considerable pressure from his own basic constituency, which is, by anybody's analysis, the harder right part of the Republican Party?
It's very, very difficult for him. I sure don't envy his position. I'm sure he'd rather not be here. Someone in the Senate yesterday said to me, Trent Lott is trying to herd frogs, that he just can't keep his caucus together, that he doesn't represent all of them. And finally, he's doing what he should have been doing a few weeks ago, some Republicans say, which is that he is going around taking the pulse of each and every senator, touching base, meeting with them, trying to come up with some sort of a compromise that the Democrats will also sign on to, and that is quite difficult. He's got his conservatives to the right of his party, as you pointed out, and the Democrats have their liberals, and it's going to be very, very difficult to come up with something that everybody thinks is fair, so they may have to come up with something that everybody doesn't like.
Gloria Borgiu. So the headlines at this hour: the second presidential impeachment trial in the history of the United States has begun in the U.S. Senate. House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Republican Henry Hyde, and 12 other House Republicans were summoned to the Senate. They will act as prosecutors. It is their goal to have President Clinton removed from office. The 2 articles of impeachment against President Clinton were read in the Senate chamber by Henry Hyde, who will make the closing arguments once the trial is underway. Now, we will be back on the air when the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, Republican William Rehnquist, is summoned to the Senate to be sworn in as the judge at these proceedings. He, in turn, will swear in the 100 members of the Senate to be the jury. Now, all that's expected to happen at about 1 o'clock this afternoon Eastern Time, and we'll be on the air to bring you that historic part of these developments today. You say, well, come on, Dan, you keep saying it's historic. There's no other word that describes it with as much at stake as it's now at stake in this Senate trial. Now, what happens after the Chief Justice becomes the judge for the trial and the senators are sworn in is frankly anybody's guess. How the actual trial will proceed when these formalities are done remains a matter of confusion, conflict, and a very partisan political infighting. So when news breaks out, we'll break in here on this CBS station. For now, Dan Rather in Washington. I'll see you again soon.